Did you know that most ET civilizations are extremely quiet? They're very silent. Their communication is through consciousness, it's through understanding oneself. So, as much as we talk and as much as we have knowledge and information, it is equally as important to emphasize the space, to emphasize the silence, to know oneself without the need for words. Who are we before language? When you were a child, there was no language, and yet you knew that you were. There was knowledge of I am. There was knowledge of existence. There was innate knowledge of existence. After we learned language and we got our names, this whole game of identification began, this whole charade of confusion, ego mind, destruction, complication. But we are innately simple and vast creatures of existence. Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay. Not sure if you're hearing it. I'm getting feedback up here. Is that okay? Okay, cool. So anyway, let's take a little deep breath and relax 2 more times and center yourself. Bring your attention to your heart or to your alignment, to your center. Again, take a deep breath and just feel yourself, feel your existence, that innate sense of I exist, before you had any words to describe anything. You see, truth will never be found in concepts. It's all mind games that we're playing. And it's important, given the degree of intensity behind the mind games that we are in participation of at this particular time in our civilization, this particular threshold. It's so crucial that you know yourselves beyond all this. But I'll get into that in a little bit. I just wanted you all to feel centered, feel yourself, be in touch with yourself, and not be so up here. So during this seminar session, I invite you to simply be and receive and feel with the heart, because the intuitive mind is way more intelligent than the physical mind, the brain mind. So, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me, Corey, wherever you are. Hey. Cool. So, my session just came to me last night. And the first segment will be I'll be shedding light on service to self versus service to others. I was contemplating, feeling into what I could contribute to the most in terms of this community, because this is, slightly different crowd than the people that usually attend my retreats. So just feeling into this event and this collective consciousness. And Love One, you're all familiar with that, I assume, because you're familiar with Corey. So Love One has been big for me since I was 15 years old. I started reading it. It's been very influential in my journey, in my understanding. So I've also been, lifelong target for non-physical service to self entities because of the nature of my work, the nature of what I'm here to offer and bring. And so they fancy interfering with my work. So I figured it'd be helpful for some of you to get more clarity on that. And Mike already started talking about this a little bit this morning. And by the way, I loved your presentation. It was awesome. And thank you, Ramana Maharshi and Ra. Those are my biggest 2 teachers, or some of the biggest 2 teachers. The second segment will be about becoming more than just a person. That's also what I felt into. In fact, this is the strongest aspect that I felt into, which is that in this community, there is so much information, and it's all about information, and I understand that. I really do understand that. But if we receive information, but we don't shift our sense of identity, our sense of self, if we don't understand who we are, then it doesn't matter what information we receive, it's going to get filtered through your identification with the body, mind, and your memories. And you can only be that powerful if you identify with something that's not who you really are, with something that's limited in space and time bound. And so anything can mess with you when you believe you're limited, when you believe you're lacking, when you believe you're not this eternal, powerful consciousness. So I want to guide you guys more into remembering that you are an eternal consciousness, that you're not the body, you're not the person, you're not the mind, and that you can have direct access to these higher states of consciousness from which there is no threat, there is no opposition. In fact, there is harmony, there's union, there's unity, there's understanding, there's true communication. And this is all beyond the mind as we know it. It's beyond information. If we don't have that as a backbone, then how are we going to utilize that information in a harmonious way? Because then we're just doing what Einstein said, you can't fix the thing from the state that created that particular problem. So if we're all dealing in information, which can be helpful and is needed on a relative level, the carriers of that information, the distributors of that information, the examples of that information need to know themselves beyond that information. Otherwise, you're just going to channel it through fear, and you're going to express it through fear, and the opposition will increase, because whatever you give energy to, you will attract more of. Third segment will be Q&A, so we can go to the next slide, if we have time. Till what hour do I have?
An hour and 15 minutes.
Hour and 15? Okay. It's counting on 2, so that's going to be quick. Heading light on service to self. So that's shedding light. VC, STO, let's go. He did a great job. He quickly needed to rewrite everything I did because of a glitch. Okay, light attracts both light and dark, right? There's this statement, light attracts like, and light attracts light, therefore, and that's true. But as you increase your brightness, especially when you've signed up to incarnate into a civilization that is a mixture, a big mismatch, has been this big soup of all these different cosmic streams for the past tens of thousands of years. And we're just battling out all this cosmic karma, right? So this is this soup, this collective agreement of we're all here together. It doesn't matter where the hell you're from, you're going to somehow be living together in the same consensus reality, which is unusual, cosmically speaking, and especially astrally speaking, or time-space speaking. Because the frequency that you're on, that's what manifests, that's what's right there. But there's this unique collective agreement in our civilization that is, let's just try this out. Let's see what happens when people with completely different values, with completely different frequencies, with completely different orientations and inclinations and karmic backgrounds and histories and genetics are all thrown together for thousands of years. Let's see how they fare, right? So that's us, and the results are obvious. It's been fun. So when you are a particularly bright spot in this confused ocean, if there's a coherence to your stream of consciousness, to your energy fields, and there is an imprint for you to share something valuable that could possibly transform this confusion into harmony, this emits a certain frequency that stands out. Does that make sense? Right? So again, there's the idea of the wanderer, which is a soul that doesn't natively need the lessons that are here anymore, but they come here anyway out of a sense of service. Not that they're not getting anything out of it at a soul level, because they're refining subtle balances between love and wisdom. But their main intention is to be of service to their brothers and sisters who are calling, always unconsciously calling. If you develop sensitivity enough, you can sense into the collective and you can hear a million cries within a single second for help, for support, for clarity, right? And so as a wanderer, as a higher density wanderer, a lot of you guys heard that call and you came here and you chose to play this game and you chose to forget. You chose to play the poker game. But there is an imprint there. There is a sort of a shield or a protection or a unique core frequency that stands out from the native population, the native civilization. And it's clearer, it's brighter, and it's here on a service to others oriented mission, if you will, or purpose, or calling. So it has a brightness. Now the brightness attracts both light and dark, which is what we'll be getting into. So the wanderers are high priority targets because of their capacity to make changes and remember quicker about the way this universe works. They don't need as much scientific evidence usually. They are more faith-oriented. Doesn't mean it can get covered up with skepticism, and you need to get rid of that, but their remembrance is very pure. It's very heartfelt. It's very innate to them. And so they're high priority targets because they can establish the new world, the new earth. They can help usher in this new reality, this new collective. So they'll be watching you. They'll be watching literally for these bright spots, these little demo switches that turn up. And every time you have a realization that's profound, that penetrates the veil of your consciousness, that helps you remember who you are, why you are here, and that sets you on this path with great dedication and inspiration and service to others, boop, they check their radar and it's like, oh, location here, vibration there, person that, and they'll come and hang out for a bit, you know? In such subtle ways that you usually don't notice it. And because it's so subtle, I want to shed some light on this. It can also be not so subtle, you know? Like when someone comes to pick up Corey and just walk into his house, obviously that's not so subtle. But for most of us, the way that they play their game is through using your weaknesses, exploiting your weaknesses. So basically you agree to be used. So, I mean, this has been with me for all my life. As a child, I had just all kinds of OCD symptoms like tics, and like I would make sounds and there'd be just so much pressure on my system at once because I felt this drive and also I felt this opposition that I was playing with as a child. Like my leg would like go a different direction and I couldn't control my body. Or a not so subtle example, for example, is, and this demonstrates and illustrates how they try to sway you from your natural orientation of service to others, is I was about 8 years old and we had this little kitten. And at the time I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know about these influences. I didn't have the words or the concepts for them, right? So we had this little kitty cat. It was like 2 months old, and we walked her on a leash still to get her familiar with, you know, where the house is and all that stuff. So at some point, I remember I had her on this leash. I was in my yard. I just came back from walking her, and something took over my body, or so it seemed, and there was this prickly bush right here. So I just watched myself for about 20 minutes. She would run out of it, and I would pull on the necklace and like land her right in the prickly bushes, and she would run. And I saw my body do this, and I was crying, but I couldn't stop myself. Just something took hold of my body. And I identified with that, which is their idea, which is their intention, that you start to either be ashamed or you stop doing what you're doing in terms of the light that you're sharing. You know, many times in like the raw quotes, thank you again for your awesome, this is perfect pre-work, like they'll go after your social organizations or you as the head of that social organization. They will try to dismantle that system, or they will try to make you experience yourself as a hypocrite or as not worthy of doing so, so that you resign out of your free will. They've got scoreboards. They hang out in sort of like fifth density bars and clubs, and they've got these scoreboards, service to self scoreboards. Right? It's very hierarchical. Even more so on the service to self side, it's very hierarchical? Yeah. So the highest points that they can score is when they make you do something out of your own free will that you think you're doing out of your own free will, but you're basically giving up some expression of your light. Does that make sense? Because that's the best. That's the least infringed. It's the least obvious, and it's the highest level chess game that they can play with you. So what they'll do is they'll mess with your weaknesses. They'll mess with your predispositions, your blind spots, the things that you don't see. And they'll manipulate it in such a way, and they'll pour this dark energy into exacerbating these particular emotions, belief systems, or doubts, or confusions, so that you will actually start to accept these things as your own insights. Does that make sense? That's the most powerful way. Now, it can become grosser, more gross, like someone like Corey, for example, who in my perspective has a position that is more immediately influential. Like they'll risk some of their scoreboard points, or they'll send their minions after him to be more upfront, to can actually decrease the scoreboard on the minions, so to speak, the lower density, the fourth density wanderers, service to self-oriented beings, but they have to obey the higher order if they wish to maintain that. But the highest way to mess with you is to not know, to have you not know that they're messing with you. So, and you wouldn't believe, all of you have had this influence in your life at one time or another, whether you remember this, know this, are able to contextualize this or not. So you don't have to assume that necessarily, but that is my perspective, that is my estimation. So, let's see. If they can't go after your weaknesses, or even if they can, they'll go after your partners, or whoever you're closest to in that moment. Have you ever noticed anything along those lines? You want to raise your hand? Ever been suspicious, like, you're not quite yourself right now? And often they try to get to your weaknesses through stimulating them in a certain way that they're not really conscious enough to shield. And so they'll respond in a certain way. They get into this funk, and you get into this communicative funk, and you feel like, what the hell is going on? I'm not myself, you're not yourself, let's break up, right? Bingo, scoreboard, yay, they broke up out of their own free will. They chose to break up, or they chose to do this, or they chose to hit each other, or they chose to abuse each other, when that's not the native frequency or intention between these two beings at all. You follow? Does that make sense? Cool. So be aware of the psychic relationship games as well, and your partner's weaknesses. Wherever you're not aware of what you are, or who you are, you're not able to really control that or be as aware of that. But this is why they're your friends, you see. Accelerated learning comes through these experiences because they show you exactly where your weaknesses are, and you can make yourself impermeable to them. You can make yourself, you can eternalize, immortalize yourself. You can transcend these things. Without them, it would take you lifetimes. So utilize these dark spots, and make friends with them. Because, which brings me to my last point, just quickly, being loved by their target is the most annoying thing to service the self entity. Now, that doesn't mean that you should, out of that intention, I'm going to annoy you, so I'm going to love you. It should be the other way around. I'm going to love you because that's my free will. I know it annoys you. I don't mean to annoy you, but I'm going to love you. And that's that. I know my weaknesses. I know that this game is happening. And absolutely, thank you so much. Thank you so much for showing me my weaknesses. Thank you so much for helping me integrate and transcend my shadows, because I feel so much more fulfilled, so much more capable, so much more powerful. I really, actually love you. You're one of my best friends. None of my physical friends have ever done this for me. Thank you so much. Howdy Om Tat Sat. Because you don't want to be working for them, and that's what no offense, but in this type of community, that's what I see a lot. Okay, we're doing a lot of their work for them. How do we do that? Because we don't understand that we are being influenced and what they want us to do, and Corey mentioned this on his show several times, we give them so much more power than they actually have by using the few symbols that we know of evil or negativity or these encounters, and we're just receiving it as an identified ego mind personality, which is afraid of losing its immediate environment and its security and its physical health and all that. So if we are identified as a human, we're so puppet-like. We can't really do anything. We need to become more godlike. We need to understand more of who we are. So when you are believing yourself to be a victim, you're literally working for them. It's like domino game. They just did this. They sit on their throne at the bar at Fifth Density, and they just send a little thought form, and it cascades into this whole frightening experience for you. But that's because you're so identified with your body. You're not the body. And again, we'll get into that. You command your reality, so don't work for them by playing victim. Remember that you are the creator. Ra describes the three main steps, and I love the simplicity of this, of the whole spiritual journey for the sincere adept, or to cultivate the discipline of the personality, or the disciplined personality. And at step one, know yourself, which is what these entities will help you do. Know your patterns, know your weaknesses, know your motivations, know your true intentions, know your belief systems. Step two, accept yourself, accept your opinions, accept your feelings, accept your fears. That's not the same as saying indulging it, right? There's a difference between indulging your belief system or accepting it as it is and witnessing it release itself. So step one, know yourself. Step two, accept yourself. Step three, become the creator. Okay, this is really my passion. There's a lot of spiritual teachings out there which are so necessary, but they're not my highest excitement to teach. But those are about self-acceptance. Accept yourself as you are. Love yourself as you are. Absolutely crucial, completely crucial. And when you get sort of past that point, and it's a dangerous proposition to even say past that point, because you do got to continue to pay attention, obviously. But when you get past a certain threshold of self-acceptance, of self-love, and you can show up for your life without fear or with very little fear and distortion, now you are ready to become the creator. And this is really where the work of the adept begins. This is really where we're talking about meditation and penetrating the veil and really knowing who you are and applying your will in ways that are completely in alignment. Or even beyond that, dissolving individuality altogether. Start exploring the end of your individuality and merge with God. It's not necessarily the desire everyone has, but some people do have that. And the fearlessness that comes from that, to really become the creator, at a certain stage you need to dissolve your individuality because, as Ra says, still, we seek the lessons of seventh density, but still to this day, we are Ra. Meaning, there is still identity apart from the creator. Even though they know it's all unity and it's all inseparable, it is still filtered through a center of individuation. Now, you, even as a human being, third density active or yellow ray active, as Ra would describe it, you can gain awareness of these higher, super high density lessons and learnings, and they can be integrated while you're physical. In fact, in some senses, it's easier to do because you have this great limitation. The contrast is so huge between those understandings and your everyday life experience of grocery shopping and arguing with your partner. So there's a lot that we can facilitate from this space of being incarnate in this seemingly limited reality. There's amazing things that you can realize. You can realize what's beyond existence, beyond creation as we know it. You can realize the one, or the absolute, as I call it, which would be eighth density, in my opinion, eighth density understanding. You can actually, even though Ra says they are still plumbing the mysteries of that, or they're still trying to grok that, you can already have direct realizations of these super high level states. And so that's part of my excitement, part of my passion, is to become the creator, have people experience more and more themselves as the creator, and less as this perceived body-mind with its story and its narrative. Sure, that's all included and that's all accepted, and it plays a certain role. It can even be exciting. But to know yourself truly, and to know yourself not only as this, but also as the creator. I mean, it's crucial, and there is no bliss like it. Because it's immortal, it's indestructible, it's fearless, it's loving, it's all-inclusive, it's beyond, it transcends. So when you start realizing that actually you're not the body, you're not the mind, you're not the person, those are all thoughts, and they weren't there when you were born. They were added onto you. How can you be anything added onto you? When you start to dive into and merge with this primordial, pre-linguistic existence, the purity of who you are, and you start to dissolve in that and dissolve in that and dissolve in that, you start to become that, become that, become that. So you become more vast, more eternal. And so you start realizing that truly, experientially, not just as a concept, like, yeah, unity. No, actually, I experience you as myself. That all is the one infinite creator playing with itself. And then really what comes up is, why so serious? You know, start having fun with this cosmic play, because the positive and the negative, it's here for a reason. It's amazing. It's so much fun. Would you ever go to a James Bond movie without a villain, where he just sits around and has tea with his Bond girl? It wouldn't do very well at the box office, you know? So you're infinite, you're immortal, and I want you to know that. And if you don't know it, it's scary. To whatever extent you don't know it, this journey is scary. Okay? And as soon as you get scared, it's a clear indication of, hey, I've got some work to do. I believe I'm the body. But do you want to really be limited to that? Just because you've assumed this for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, or 84, you at some point you want to loosen that up, right? You want to experience the creator in your heart. You want to experience the undiluted infinite bliss of pure consciousness beyond body-mind assumption. Or maybe you don't, I don't know. But then it becomes more fun, because you're not as afraid. You become less and less afraid. And again, then you can love and include, and you're actually just playing with these fifth and fourth density minions, because you become so aware of these types of influences more and more as you start to recognize them. And because you know yourself beyond the body-mind, generally your awareness just becomes more radial, it becomes more aware, and you start picking up on all these subtleties that everyone else seems to be missing, or they just seem to be asleep in their own personal bubble. And you start to wake up and you start to notice things and see things and feel things and sense things. And then you're able to play chess with these beings. Before that, you're just a chess piece. You're just a little pawn. But you can become a chess master, and you can actually lovingly defeat, or rather resolve, the paradox of polarities by coming from the sixth density understanding, at the very least, of unity. As Ra says, I am of the vibration of, I'm paraphrasing, the vibration of unity. All paradoxes are resolved. All polarities have ended, have unified. So as a separate creature, as a pawn playing on the good side, yay, disclosure, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's what is needed relatively. But there's a difference between playing a game or believing that you are the character in the game, right? As soon as you believe you are the character in the game and you forget that you're actually there, you can turn off the television and have a chat with someone else. You are free beyond your own character. You just have a role to play here that doesn't make you physical, that doesn't make you limited, that doesn't make you human. You're not human. You're not human. You're not human, but you're also not alien. You're nothing. And in that, you can comprehend everything, and that's where love can flow from, and that's where an indestructibility can come from, and that's where all polarities can resolve themselves. And that's where violence and hatred will cease in your very presence. It doesn't mean nothing can ever happen if it's relevant for your character to go through that experience, or for others to experience that in your presence, but you will literally find that things just don't happen around you as you start activating that frequency of love, of resolving the polarities, of not feeding into that game. So this is a tricky balance, because how do we fight for disclosure without fighting? How do we become Gandhis in this whole disclosure operation? I believe it is only possible through loosening up identification with the body, the mind, the person, the ego, the assumption of who you are. There's just no other way. Every piece of information you get is secondary to your nature, to who you are, to what you are. And so you'll be filtering that through whatever identification you have. And so the very identity of who you are. And if you have never heard of this guy before, you've heard of him twice now, so pay attention, because you do believe in synchronicity. You may not believe in me, but you believe in synchronicity. So pay attention, Ramana Maharshi. Look him up. Okay, who are you? It's the investigation for the very root of your identity. Because every time you're speaking to someone, you have an assumption of, I'm over here, I'm this body, I'm this person, I've got this history, and I'm talking to you. Every time you're speaking, every time you're expressing yourself socially, or even without being social, you're assuming that you are someone. It's an assumption. It's not actually true if you investigate directly, using direct experience. But to do that, you need to give concepts a break. You need to take that pause, and I often say, for 2 to 5 seconds at a time, at least 12 times a day, completely seize any and all thoughts, and know the existence that remains. Wake up there to that. Yeah, so anyway, you'll get these influences as you're trying to start new operations or projects or businesses, or even when you have inspirations, you will have all these doubts come up, and they will exacerbate that with invisible dark energy, so to speak, or quite literally actually. And so you will start to, you'll start getting into these funks. When you're getting into a funk, take a break. Okay, don't take anything seriously. Just break completely from your process of having to come to any conclusion. Because if you feel like you have to come to a conclusion at that moment and there's great pressure and you're confused, that's when you're going to start making these decisions that will up their scoreboard. Which, I love them, so that's good for them. I'm happy for them. But since I seem to be slightly more vocalizing on the side of service to others, and I would love to see the civilization uplift itself and understand all this stuff, and be disclosed, and be treated honestly, treat itself honestly, because it's completely a reflection of our victimization. We're literally waking up out of victimhood, collectively. That's what this is. And you're at the forefront of that in a very visible, obvious way. Well, visible to you, obvious to you. But everyone is going through this at their own level, in their own way. They may not just have the concepts for it. But this whole thing with dark versus light, or service to self versus service to others, on this planet is a direct, immediate result of your victimization. You, meaning everyone. Me, everyone, this planet. It's victimization. Nothing, you agree to be used. You agree to be used. Now, I'm not saying it's not innocent that you deliberately agree to be used. Nevertheless, on a certain level of your consciousness, you have agreed to be used. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the case. Because that's just the way reality is structured. It cannot reflect to you something that's not within you. It's impossible. It's like a mirror. Right? To use Bashar's example, when you look into the mirror and you see this frown, this unhappy frown, or this victimized, anguished, sad face, you don't go over to the mirror and try to make the mirror smile. You're like, why is it not smiling? Now, you got to understand that physical reality is about smoke and mirrors. It literally is smoke and mirrors. The more you dissolve the ego, the more you will actually experience this as a dream. It's a waking dream. Not solid. Matter has never existed. Matter does not exist. It doesn't exist. It's all consciousness. This is the creator dreaming. That's why they call it the grand illusion. It's because it's all just a big effing dream. And the funniest realization is when you realize it's one being doing all this stuff, right? And then you get into the opposition mode and the victim mode, and you're like screaming and like whatever it is that we do sometimes. But then you realize it really is all the one infinite creator. There's only one. There's only one. So why so serious? When we smile, the reflection starts to smile back. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to manipulate physical reality. I'm not saying don't speak your mind. I'm not saying don't do this, because I think this is a wonderful initiative. I think this is a wonderful community coming together with such honesty and desire for improved civilization in their hearts. But if you really want to be effective, you got to understand that this is all a game. You can't play this game effectively for service to others if you believe this is super, super serious. And again, it can get really challenging if your children get threatened and stuff like that. If it gets really close to home, I understand it's super, super challenging. Nevertheless, just try this as much as you can. Try to bring in this increased awareness that really you cannot die. Really, there is no death. There is no end. There is no doom. We are the one infinite creator. If you start vibing at that frequency, I promise you magic will happen. Your efficiency goes through the roof, and the lack of how much you can be influenced increases. You can just not be influenced anymore, or less and less and less. So what I'm saying might seem to undermine a little bit the motivation of this event, but actually it's to increase your efficiency. And you just got to realize that there is indeed a time and a place for balancing, counterbalancing, and taking on that one side against the other side. Yes, disclosure. Let's stop the secrecy. But you have to understand that even while your character is performing that role, because it's relative here in this game, it's not who you are. And you're not limited to that game. You transcend that game. In fact, you are the one infinite creator. Cool. Part 2 of the slides. Thank you. Become more than just a person. You are not a body, mind, or person. You are pure consciousness, God, the infinite. Seeking personal gain causes a life of suffering. And you'd be surprised how many service to others beings are completely coloring in their structure of service to others with service to self. So it's like the outlines of the picture that they're coloring in is, yes, that's service to others, but they're coloring it in with service to self. Innocently so, but that's why we need to bring awareness into this and become really, really honest with ourselves. That's why we need to know ourselves, accept ourselves, and then become the creator. As a human being, you're not going to make much of a difference. As a God, as a consciousness, as a realized being, or at least a somewhat realized being, you're going to make a difference simply by breathing, by being, even by thinking, when you choose to think. Yes, thinking is a choice, right? Do you know that? You don't have to think. Did you know that? Often we forget that we don't have to think. We are. Our nature is completely beyond thought. Just a reminder. Devoting yourself to service to all causes a life of fulfillment. So this is at a more relative level. The self-realization, you no longer need anything. You're free. You are God. You are that which is in all beings. And there is no happiness in anything for you because you are happiness. And the world ceases to exist as an externalized, objective reality. It just no longer appears to you that way. You are the source of everything. But at a more relative level, while we still believe that we are an individual being, and individuation exists up to about late 6th, early 7th density, according to at least my interpretation of those materials. So, as an individuation of God, right? You want to discover and understand that to devote yourself to service to all causes a life of fulfillment. Anytime that you seek personal gain, personal security, personal maintenance, like accumulating what you can and then securing what you have, you're a pawn. You can't play. You've got your hands tied behind your back and you're doing it. It's because you want stuff. You want things. You want security. You want safety. You want privacy. You want this. You want that. You're not a physical body. Yeah, I know that. I'm God, or I'm an alien, or I'm an ET. But really, when it comes down to it, you got your hands tied behind your back because we're afraid. And that's okay. But we need to realize that we can't be afraid if we want to, quote unquote, win this game. Okay? Fear needs to go. And when it arises, it's not a bad thing that it arises. It just indicates that you have a belief that suggests something could happen to you, which suggests the belief that you're a person. Investigate that assumption until it dissolves. Seek the root of mind, Maharshi says, and it shall disappear. And this is true. I have found this in my own experience. To seek the very root of the mind makes it vanish. And what remains is God, non-duality, the one infinite creator. Even glimpses of this will greatly empower your capacity to be of service. Greatly. Greatly. Okay, so what really helps in devoting yourself to service to others is a few things. So try to follow me here. Here's a thought, here's an assumption, and I got to give some credit to my friend Anurag Gupta, who I do this kind of methodology, teach this with. So if you're interested, look up Anurag Gupta. First of all, whenever you're sad, whenever you're not happy, it's about you. Always. Just going to stop talking until you realize this. Every ounce of your unhappiness is because you're making it about you. Every time you're truly ecstatic, it's because somehow you've been able to catalyze or see catalyzed through others, even if you had nothing to do with it physically, that caused a particular frequency of truth to be realized in the consciousness of those people. Every time you've been genuinely happy and carefree, it's been about everyone else. In fact, when you're completely depressed, and I ask you for directions, or I ask you to help me out for 1 second, for that 1 second that you're not thinking about yourself, you're actually not sad, you're not depressed. But then you go back. So you help me, and you're like kind of happy actually. And if you give enough space to it, the momentum will shift, and you'll get this fulfillment that you don't know where it comes from. It's like causeless, but it's because you're opening yourself to all as the one infinite creator, as yourself. You destroy, for that moment, you're penetrating and perforating the illusion that you're separate, lacking, limited, that you're physical body. And the vision itself, the vision to which the entire collective is hooked up to, operates through your body. It's not a person operating. It's not neediness. It is actually a profound fulfillment and a union with all that's operating through you. So you help me out for 10 seconds, and you got distracted from your personal bubble, and you're happy. But then you're like, okay, let me go back to my sadness, because I remember it was important. And in fact, I worked 40 years to establish this pride. I worked 40 years to gain this sadness, this depression. So let me go back to it because it's really important. Who am I without my suffering? Who am I without my history? That's exactly what you want to find out. You see, self-realization, God realization, these amazingly, they'll blow your mind. These realizations cannot occur through memory. Okay, they have absolutely zero to do with memory. When there's a complete gap in your memory, there is, meaning your memory is not used in that moment, there is truth. There's God. There's isness. There is the isness of all that is right there. And it can be discovered. It can be awoken to. So transcend the person, which will always be weak and limited. Not saying it's bad or negative, because this is the vehicle through which we realize more of our infinity. And that's the exciting expression, to go from darkness to light. But, quite objectively speaking, the person is going to be weak and limited, right? Become the vision or your calling, which is, it's a few steps down from becoming all that is and God and no longer having any personal will. A few steps down from that would be to become the vision or your calling, which is indestructible. You can't destroy a vision. You can destroy a physical being. You can destroy a person. You can humiliate an ego, but you can never, ever destroy the calling, your calling. You can never destroy the vision. So, kind of like Bruce Wayne says in Batman Begins, if I become more than just a man, if I become a symbol, then I forgot what he says, but then I'm more than just a man. I'm like invincible. I become this thing. I become the vision. So you all have a unique entrance point or plug into the collective vision of this transformational age that's occurring right now. Again, remember, millions of people calling for help every fucking second. And you're hooked up to that vision. And you have a unique calling hooked up to that vision, a unique capacity to express the love and the light through the infinite crystal of creation. And your facet is unique and deserves attention and crystallization of purification and emptying yourself of any thought of you needing anything. Now, this is a gradual process. Be kind to yourself, but also give yourself a kick in the butt sometimes, because it speeds things up and it increases your capacity for bliss and fearless service to others, which increases your fulfillment. So how do you discover your calling? Because there's a lot of people that are service to others and they want to be a service to others, but they're just kind of at a loss for you. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure why I'm here. I feel a little limited. Maybe you're physically a little disabled or mentally or in whatever way. And so people aren't quite clear on what that is and how to align to their fulfillment in being of service to others. And so a few ways to discover this is to ask yourself a couple questions. Anyone here, what was the happiest moment when we were most lit up in your life that had something to do with others? Some scenario where there were other people. Going to Haiti? Okay. Yeah? Pointing awareness out to someone, the awareness, and they got it, right? That's what you said, right? Beautiful.
Long lost friend.
Long lost friend, and you found him again, you re-embraced, you reunited? Yeah. Great, excellent. Organized the group cleanse, great. What else? What? This event, great. Awesome. This event is a great example, right? Because you're all here with a common intention, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And to then see this community blossom and wake up and empower themselves and unify themselves, hopefully not so much against, as hopefully I've been able to balance out a little bit, but simply as the truth of God, as the truth of life, as human rights, but without the opposite, without the opposition. Don't believe in the opposition. The less you see opposition, the less you can be messed with, okay? So anyway, so we're here. And you guys are all, to some extent, happy and being lit up because you're here and you see all these faces and people realizing similar things. So it's a good example. So your calling can be verbalized as a formula to help you get started. And that is, the formula is, my calling is, repeat after me. People experiencing ... You don't have to repeat that, but that's it. So I don't have a flip chart here, make it a little easier, but whenever people experience what particular unique frequency of the Creator, be it joy or be it something very specific like realizing that they can do anything they want, or realizing their true awareness, who they really are, or anything along those lines, and try to make it as specific, boil it down, distill it to the purest, most exciting quality for you. So if the people around you realize or experience what frequency of the Creator, what state of being, what realization or experience do they have that lights you up when you see it out there? Because it reminds you of the truth of who you really are, and so you get lit up. So what were some of the most lit up moments in your life, and what were people experiencing in that moment? Anything? Anyone clear on this? Sorry? Bliss in vibration? Nice. Community? Awesome. When you see someone get healed? Beautiful. Okay.
Co-creation. A higher understanding.
Higher understanding. Co-creation.
Birth of a child.
Birth of a child. Okay, so for example, with the birth of a child, generally I would say your calling is not people experiencing the birth of a child. So this is a great example to distill that down further. Okay, so I'm experiencing the birth of a child, and something about that, there's something in that formula of frequencies. It's a combination of frequencies. When a child gets born, it's not just one vibration. There's a lot of things going on for the child, the parents, your presence there. So what about that experience lights you up the most? Can you distill that? And you don't have to do it right now unless it's instantly clear to you. Or raise your hand in like a minute or so of you.
Well, it's the definition of being, beginning.
It's the definition of being or beginning. That's beautiful. That's great. Awesome. So what if you see an adult, they're age 45, they've gone through a lot of trauma and history, and they identify with the body and the mind and their history and their memories. And so somehow, whether by virtue of your presence or catalytic words, or by a friend, and you have physically nothing to do with it, you're just a witness to it. But somehow they realize, oh my God, I am, and actually every moment is a clear slate. I can create whatever I want. I am this beingness. I am the purity of life. I am the beginning and the end. This is the beginning of my life. Would that excite you? Beautiful. So in that case, repeat after me. My calling is people experiencing themselves as a new beginning. For example, how does it make you feel? It's great. So what you want to do is you want to distill this and distill this and distill this until when you say it, you're like in tears, or you're so excited, or you're so moved, something just clicks, this blockage in your heart dissolves, and you can't help but feel genuinely moved. And that's when you found your calling. And it's the verbalization of your calling. It's not your calling. The words are not the thing, but the verbalization, the formula helps greatly. So I encourage you to tonight do some introspection and really go through some of your past experiences when you were the most lit up. And don't just have it at face value, like people experiencing love. That can be good, but if you're not moved to like, oh my God, yes, I know why I'm here now, then it's not exactly it yet. It might get close. But you want to get to a closer and more accurate representation of your true calling in words. So what about people experiencing love is it? Well, it might be that they went from darkness to light. And suddenly you say, well, my calling is people experiencing a transformation from darkness to light. And suddenly when you say that, you feel like, yes, this is it. Oh my God, I found it, right? So you want to do that and then continue with the iteration that feels best to you at this timing, and then continue to refine that as you go. Every once in a while, just ask yourself, what is my calling really? What about that is? Is there a improved definition right now? And here is why this is beautiful and important, and why this could cause you a life of unending happiness. It's because now that you have your calling, you can look at the structure and the environment of your life and see exactly what is not conducive to people experiencing transformation, new beginnings, love, truth. And suddenly all these areas in your life, all your hobbies, your activities, some of the people you hang out with, the job that you have, the thoughts that you have, suddenly you're like, holy crap, no wonder, sorry for the words, Is this a church? It's now the law of one church, and everything is allowed, right? It's a dance hall. Okay, good. Why so serious? There you go. So you'll go like, oh my God, no wonder I've been not happy on a day-to-day constant basis, because my life is exactly going against my calling. Everything that I do goes against my calling. It prevents my calling. It's just social conditioning. There's this whole garbage, this whole memory base, this whole everything. I identify with the things and I do the things and I think I'm excited about the things that have very little to nothing to do with establishing more and more people experiencing the truth of their being, or the capacity to be of service, or going from darkness to light, or infinite love, or the creator in everything, or whatever it might be that lights you up. When you find a statement that lights you up, you found your unique, individualized crystallization of your incarnation, the imprint, the blueprint for your reason for being here. When you realize that you know why you're here, now you can realign the structure, the architecture, your schedule, your hobbies, the environment. Everything of your life can now fall underneath that. If you don't have a course, you can't course correct. That's why everyone is so confused and so unhappy, and that's why their spiritual glimpses only last for 10 seconds, and then they're depressed again. Because they fall back over and over again in an environment with the same people, with the same activities, with the same structure and architecture and thought forms that are in a frequency that has nothing to do with why they are here. Relative happiness, meaning the individual being happy in this life, that experience only happens when you are doing something that's in alignment with your calling. That's when you're happy. When you're not doing that, when you're not being that, I'm not saying never to take a break, because breaks can help you fuel, put fuel in the car to go again to your course. So sometimes you have to put fuel in the car and be seemingly service to self, but now it's done within this great context of service to all. And your calling, it's in alignment with your calling. So anytime you feel really bad or just not so good for a long period of time, take a good hard look at your life and eliminate everything that's not conducive with your calling, that does not support your calling. Change it with something that does support your calling, and I promise you, your heart will open, your crown will open, source will flow through you. Love, creativity, fulfillment, connection, compassion, the capacity, the power to transcend challenges and heal will just come flooding in. It'll just flow through you. You don't even have to do anything. You're just being your calling. You're just beaming who you are and what you're all about. Mine is everything knowing it's the one infinite creator. So this will amp up and speed up and gain momentum. How much more time do I have? 25 minutes. Oh, that's good. So I can slow down a little bit. So this will build momentum, right? You become good at this. This is optimization. It's kind of like the Tim Ferriss stuff, where you optimize your life and you optimize your life so that you don't have to do as much, but you gain as much as you can. It's kind of like that, but you do it spiritually with your calling, and you focus only on the things that truly excite you, that you're passionate about, that make you light up. If you don't live that life as a human physical being, you're going to be causing yourself dis-ease, whether mental disease or physical disease. As Ross states, first the catalyst is given to the mental body complex. If it's not paid attention to, it's not understood, it's not transformed or utilized or listened to, it will be transferred into the physical complex, right? The physical body. So anyway, what will happen is first you take baby steps, right? This can take you like 6 months to 2 years to really transform all these elements in your life and make them in alignment with your calling. Ideally, every day you wake up and the very thing you have to do that day is directly causing people to experience whatever your calling is. Insert your calling. Because now you can't help but be happy when you wake up, and you can't help but want to do the things. So, for example, my life right now is so accelerated and fine-tuned in this way that really to do anything for myself, I get grumpy. Like anything, like a car ride that I'm not actually creating something, or I'm not deepening my dissolution into God, or anything that has not something directly to do with my calling makes me unhappy and frustrated. Just super quick. I don't do things for myself. I've learned I'm happiest when I don't do things for myself. And so this takes a little time to get adjusted to, but then you're really the vision and you become a mirror to everyone else because there's no need, there's no desire, there's no greed left in you. It's completely empty of ego. And now everyone that comes to you, you will literally feel their higher self, utilize your mental and physical body to elicit speech, action, confirmation, radiance, whatever, however it needs to use your vehicles to exactly mirror where these people are at, plus a little bit more, so that they can gain conscious knowledge of how they can grow more into who they are. So outwardly, you start to become like a mirror. Now, this is only if you really do this work every day, intensely, for months and years. Okay, but the result is that you're empty of self, and you're just a walking hologram. You're just a ghost. But your body is just a ghost, and it's used by God, by the infinite intelligence, because you're not in the way. You're not pondering how you can secure something for yourself, which is a lack of faith. Would you agree? You needing anything is a lack of faith. You don't need anything. When that gets through to you, that's truly when service to others that percentage can ramp up, and the blue avians will be very happy with you. And all this stands or falls with, to whatever degree you realize that literally everything is the one infinite creator. The one. You are that one. It takes time because we're so attached to this, right? Our life, our memory, our physical body. It's scary to drop that. It's scary to not have needs. But it becomes the most liberating state. Every day is just flow. You don't have any needs or arguments. Doesn't mean you never ever operate or have a confronting situation. In fact, I've got many of these. I go in hard, and then I become soft. And I go in hard, and then I become super mellow and soft. And so there's this play that's happening. The play doesn't end. But now it's utilized, and it comes from a higher intelligence because it's not premeditated by a person that doesn't exist when you investigate it. All our lives, all of our biases, all of our preferences, all of our needs, all of our suffering and anguish on a day-to-day basis come from this uninvestigated idea that we are a person. Investigate it, get scared when you realize there's nothing there, and re-pretend that you're a person. Stop, investigate, get scared that you're not there, and re-pretend that you're a person. And at some point, there will be a day when you investigate, the person is not there, and instead of being afraid, there's this infinite bliss that kicks in. And you now realize who you really are, what you really are. And now that you've tasted this, you want nothing but that. You want the one infinite creator. You want to become the creator. So then you go about knowing yourself, accepting yourself, even altering yourself where it helps you be in alignment with your calling, where your physical life, the expression of who you are as an individuation of God, now is in alignment with that true frequency that wants to come forth. But you also want to realize more and more of the emptiness of a separate self. Because the experience, it's not even it's beyond perception, it's beyond experience ultimately. But the knowingness, the realization of the one infinite creator, there's nothing like it. And Ra states, when one in yellow ray active, I'm paraphrasing, penetrates the 8th level or the 8th density, there is an unspeakable joy. There's a vision of unspeakable joy for most. It is different for each individual, but this unspeakable joy. And usually that being does not instantly terminate their incarnation. They usually have a great desire to then be of service, because they realize the emptiness of who they are, and they realize that all is the one infinite creator, and so they can show up in this game having transcended the game. It's like going back to high school and just walking around and seeing all these little guys with these backpacks, struggling through life and puberty and boners and, non-deliberate boners is what I mean. And you feel transcendent, right? You feel like, hey, that's no longer my problem. And that's great. And it's like that with this life too. It's no longer your problem, but now it's your duty, it's your responsibility, it's your joy, it's your honor, if you so choose. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's do, how much more time do I have? 15 minutes. We'll do a 5-minute meditation and maybe get a couple questions in. So take a deep breath, close your eyes. Witness the sense of having a body that's breathing. Try to encapsulate all of it, just the entire feeling of having a body. Just witness it. The sensation of sitting on the cushion, the sensation of effortless breathing in and out, respiration, maybe even the heart beating, the muscles sort of relaxing gradually, the brain, the nervous system. The canister. And now ask yourself, in this relaxed, aware, witnessing state, does the body see me, know me, or do I know and see the body? Who is watching who? Is it the body that's watching you, or are you watching the body? Now observe the thoughts. And the funny thing is, when you intently observe thoughts, there are none. But when there are some thoughts, when you're not as intensely present yet as you can be, observe the thoughts that do come. And ask yourself, are the thoughts witnessing me, or am I witnessing thoughts? And if it is I who is watching the thoughts, and who is aware of the sense of having a body, then who am I? Who is the I? Whence I look, whence I see, from where I perceive my body and my mind. And it's like you're turning awareness 180 degrees around, inside onto itself, and you ask yourself, who is that? So now awareness becomes aware of awareness. And there's an intensification of clarity, a brightness that happens in your direct experience when you do this. Instead of being filtered through concepts and thoughts, you actually become intensely present, not to objects out there, but to the seer itself, the pure seeing, the background of awareness. Suddenly you notice the background of awareness. This is the beginning of enlightenment. This is the entrance point into enlightenment. This is you waking up to what you actually are, which is not the body, because you see the body. How can you be what you see? Who's seeing the body? That's you. Figure that out. Rest as that. And you will notice that throughout your life, you think you have changed, but you have not changed ever. In fact, you are completely incapable of change. That which knows this moment knew the same moment when you were 5 years old, looking in the mirror. That which knows is that which knows right now. And so that which knows no time in its true identity. It is actually the 0 point. It is actually the timeless realm. You don't have to traverse all these levels and layers. You are right here, right now. You are the me that is watching. Your innermost sense of me has never changed. Become more curious about this innermost sense of being, of I am, of I exist. And with practice, the mind will dissolve in it more and more. And that which is, always awake, always aware, always unchanging, always eternal, will reveal itself to be the infinite I am of all that is. This cannot be grokked with the mind. It can only happen when you go beyond the mind into pure awareness, free of the sense of location, free of the sense of space-time, free of identifying with any idea, any language, any words. Before you think, you already are. Before you as an individual were, the universal identity was, the I, the pure I. You can dive into that. And if you so desire, you can merge with it. You can literally become God by this portal that's 180 degrees in the opposite focus of what you usually focus on. When you have a sensation, ignore the sensation, inquire into the awareness of the sensation, and then rest deeper into that awareness of awareness. When you notice a thought, ignore the thought. It has no importance, no significance. Give it no meaning. Instead, ignore the thought and become aware of awareness. When you have a feeling or an emotion, ignore the feeling or the emotion and ask yourself who's aware of it, and become aware of the awareness itself. This is the one infinite creator, sitting in the very seat of your heart, your true heart, not your physical heart, the heart of your beingness, the heart of your I am. That is where God is. That is what you are. You are God. You simply forgot. You took on identity. You assumed, and you assumed, and you assumed. You became a series of notions. That's why it's so annoying to talk to other people, because there's just a stream of thoughts you have to deal with. There's no truth there. There's no truth in concepts ever. You are. It is. God is. Explore that, so that intelligent infinity can start operating more and more through your mind and your body. Take a deep breath. Remember that you're not the breath, you're the awareness. Notice awareness more, turn the brightness up on awareness, turn the brightness down on your perception of the world of form. Become the formless seer. Become infinite consciousness. Merge, dive in, enjoy the bliss. The Indians say Satchidananda is the true nature of existence. Sat means truth or consciousness, or existence. Chit means consciousness or awareness. And Ananda means bliss. Awareness of pure being is bliss. And there's nothing more empowering and transcending than that. In fact, there's one more thing, but this is the entrance point. The absolute is even beyond consciousness. The original one is beyond the first distortion of awareness. And even that can be realized, which is the 8th level, in my opinion. The 8th density. It is where all of creation coalesces back into the one original before any creation, before any identity. And then in the later stages of 8th density, it reemerges as the first density of the next octave. But there is this timeless amount of unimaginable timelessness where the consciousness, in a sense, rests in abeyance beyond any and all creation. It is the one infinite perfect completion that cannot be described. And ultimately, you are that absolute even now, while I'm talking to you through this body, hitting the ears, which don't really exist, receiving this input, this information within your mind. Your mind is within your I am consciousness. Your I am consciousness is within the universal I. And the universal I is but a thought compared to the one infinite original. This is the path to self-realization in a nutshell. Take a deep breath. Know yourself as beyond the body. And watch all your opposition glide away and see that this battle is already won, my friends. If you can embody the vibration of the result of winning this war, you have already won this war. And everything that you attract to you and through you and from you will become an immediate embodiment, will turn to gold. So your service will be effortless because you're no longer dependent on it. You're no longer afraid of it. You're no longer trying so hard. And everything that comes from you now is an embodiment of a full-fledged, fourth density, love-based civilization. There's nothing more liberating than to realize and surrender to the fact that you, as a separate entity, have no existence. Suddenly, only God is. You are not. This requires deep, deep inquiry, consistent, persistent realization of what you really are versus what you assume you are. We've got some friends in the room. Some fifth density friends. Because the light is increasing, you see. They can't grasp you there. When you go there, they can't grasp you. Because you go even beyond them, beyond their understanding of what they are. They're so invested in this game that when you cease to be so invested in this game, You're kind of just sitting there like a master, smiling, loving, beaming, and there's nothing they can do to affect you or sway you. You have known yourself, accepted yourself, and transcended yourself and become the creator. So good. It's so good. It's just so good. The war is over. We can just party for the next 4 days.